Hi, if you or your children are suffering because of your relationship with your ex-partner, because it's stressed or strained, or maybe they're just not a nice person, this show is for you. Welcome to the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brook Olson and Charlie Jewett. Enjoy another episode now.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 28 of the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brook Olson and Charlie Jewett. How you doing today, Brook?
Doing really well, Charlie. Ready to go again.
I like the name of this. I don't need this class, right? He or she's the one who's causing the problems. This is exactly the opposite of what we're teaching people, right? But it is a conversation that comes up a lot whenever you're offering help in any area, right? Particularly any area that has to do with therapy or getting trained or growing. Sometimes people feel like that's an insult to them or that they're not the ones that need the help. And the reality is, the only reason you even created this class is because this is a unique niche of person that they're the only people in the world that have to deal with these narcissists and people like that. And the training is for the people who are dealing with them, not for the person who really needs the help. And the way that people say this, right?
Yeah, this is really about management, Charlie. And, you know, when people go to court and the judge says you have to go take this class and you've got to spend this money and you've got to spend this time, they really begin to get upset about it rather than go, well, there's something here for me to learn. I can start to do things differently and move from that direction.
Yep. What attitude they show up with. I mean, the attitude to have really, I mean, we're not even talking about people that are court appointed, although that can happen in California, right? Does that happen to you across the country or just California? If you get court appointments from just California or other states as well?
Yeah, we get court appointments from all over the country, and it's really interesting that we're doing that because there's so many places that don't have these classes available. High conflict parenting classes or co-parenting classes are getting ordered. They're saying go get them, but they're not being offered. So people are looking for classes and they don't know. And some of what I get is, well, that's way too expensive, or I don't have the time for that, or whatever the reason that they're looking for. I don't have the money. And yet they're not able to see the through line in all of this, where it is like, you know, this is an austerity program. This class that I offer is an austerity program for anybody that takes it. It's going to save them time. It's going to save them headaches, and it's going to save them money, especially if they're working with attorneys, because they're going to learn to have the tactics that they need, the strategies to move forward, to tell their attorneys what they want to do and to get their head around it.
Right. No, I learned about you through mediation and took it voluntarily because I wanted to. So I didn't have any of that weird sensation of making this. I wanted to be there. But some of that is that there's a flavor to it. Like they've been made to take the class, so their attitude might be a little off. But a lot of our listeners, we're just recommending they take it on their own, that they just decide to go through it because it'll save them time, money, and headache.
Right. And they're coming in, they're looking for this information. The people that are listening to this podcast have reached out to try to find more information. And we're really supplying as much as we can just for free for people to get their head around what's going on. And if they just take what we're giving them, it's going to just really upgrade everything that's happening for them. But there's this big gap in information and relationship with other people that are in this that help move people along in such a more efficient way.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you've got this class created for people that have to deal with these difficult exes. But some of those people say, I don't need this class. They're the ones who need it. And why do you think that's happening? Why do you think they're picturing the difficult ex as the one that needs to be in the class?
Well, it's really a normal place to put the orientation of the problem onto somebody else. You know, I'm okay. I'm not causing this. I'm really willing to work this out. I want to do the right thing. It's them that don't want to do it. It's the other person that doesn't want to do what's being asked of them. Mm-hmm. And again, it's this idea that I can take control of this. I can start to manage this if I have the tools to manage it. And that's what this class is about. It's not about trying to change the other person in any way, shape, or form, because we've all come to that arena for the most part that we know that that's not going to happen. And expecting change or demanding change from somebody else is just absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah.
But that's the initial orientation. It's like, I'm okay here. And the truth of the matter is you may be okay here. The problem is that you're stuck in this cycle, and how do you solve the problem of getting out of it?
Yeah. Yep. And the kids might not be okay, even though they may be sounding like they are, or telling you what you want to hear. You've mentioned that to me a number of times. The kids will tell each parent what they want to hear, right?
Right, right. And learning how to manage that one. It's like, how do I filter through the things that aren't real? How do I get the proper information of what's really going on? Because if I'm not getting accurate information and I'm engaging in this with the other person and that's not really going on, then I am in the creation of it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And there's a knowledge here that people don't have. What we're teaching in these classes is so counterintuitive. And because it's so counterintuitive, because it's such a bizarre world, people make huge mistakes. And
Right.
That's why they need the class.
So let's talk about that word class, because I've been there, but most people haven't. And there's always resistance to spending money. There's always resistance to doing something you've never done before, because it's kind of like it's just not familiar, right?
Right.
And then I would think, sitting in a different state, watching you on TV, listening to you talk for 2 hours would be considered boring. Is that what's happening in these classes? Will the person be staring at their computer camera, listening to you talk for 2 hours?
No, actually, though, you have a lot of opportunity to hear other people and what they're going through and what their successes are and how they've managed to utilize the tools that we're teaching in the class. Part of my class time is spent giving lectures and passing along information, but so much of it is talking with the different parents that are in the class, bringing their problems forward, problem solving in real time around what it is that I'm teaching, so they can see that this isn't just material that's going out, that it's got a ready time, real time application.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a ton from listening to you work with other people, and to be candid, there were the people. I'm here in California, not too far from you, 30, 40 minutes. So I got to come sit on the chairs in your office and everything. But some of the best participants and the best input was given from little video cameras like this. The people, if you're one of the people piping into the class from another state, you'll probably see very much the way we record these podcasts. There's the other members' faces. One's in Idaho, one's in Ohio. And some of the best input and most lively people were on those little TV screens, right, on your computer, not there in class with us. They couldn't cut the dog, but they can get all the other experience.
Right. This is the exact platform that we use. This one right here.
Yeah. Well, that would be helpful for people to know it's not 2 hours of lecture, because that wouldn't excite me.
Put you to sleep, wouldn't it?
It would put me to sleep. But I would say on the same measure, if someone's more on the shy end of the spectrum, we're also not taking turns each talking for 20 minutes. You don't have to, have everyone stare at you while you share your deepest, darkest secrets. You can just listen and learn and then ask questions if you feel comfortable, right?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting thing that you just said, Charlie, because many people will come in and they'll start with the video piece, or even here in class, and they'll just sit in the background and they won't say much, and they'll just kind of listen. And somewhere around week 3, 4, somewhere in there, they start to come alive because the material starts to be enlivened within them and within their process, and they see that they're not the only one in it, and they'll start to engage in the conversation more, and they'll start to ask more questions and give more input to what their experiences are. Really lively.
Nice. Well, let's talk about this, the denial of relationship dance and the engagement. What are we digging into here first?
So when people are first ordered to or suggested to come to the class, there's this denial of, I need this. It's like they don't know that the dance that they're in, they don't understand what's happening. Again, there's this idea that it's somebody else that's causing it and it's not me. And they run into the righteous indignation, the pushback of, stop blaming me. This isn't my fault. It's not my problem. It's somewhere else. And they start to really lay that victim statement onto somebody else. And their orientation, again, is to somebody else being the problem. And this is that whole victim piece of not taking responsibility. And they go into, the various different excuses of, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I've already done everything. I've tried everything and nothing works. And you just don't understand this is really unique, because people think that, this is something that is not out there in a big way, that they're kind of isolated in it. And the class really gives them this idea that, holy crap, this is something that a lot of people go through, and that when they can start to relate and know that this is not just their unique piece, it gives them more potency and potential to move forward. And then there's this idea that this other person won't change and it's a waste of effort. And, coming back to, the other person isn't going to change, but it isn't a waste of effort because you get to learn how to manage this.
Yeah, and my analogy is going to break down because the listeners aren't lifeguards trying to save someone. But when you say, I don't need this class, it's the other person that needs to change or has all the problems. It sort of reminds me of a lifeguard taking, lifeguard training. How do you save somebody who's drowning, who's flailing and fighting back at you? And you say, well, I don't need training. They're the ones who are acting crazy and not swimming. No, as a lifeguard, the skill you have to learn is how do you be around the person who's not logical and acting crazy at the time, doing crazy things, and still get the job done, right? Mm-hmm. Our listeners are not trying to save their exes and rescue them. Their exes aren't the flailing victim, but the same idea. There's a skill to be learned. How do you deal with a person who's acting crazy? And why do each one of us feel like our case is so unique and that we're alone to some degree? One, not being in classes or not being around other people and going, man, there's 20, 30, 40 people just right here going through this, and the class repeats every, 8 weeks or 9 weeks, or what are we up to?
9 weeks. 9 weeks.
9 weeks. You remember how alone I felt before I found your class? There was one group that got together 3 hours from me once a month, and it took me a while to even find them, and they didn't have a way to pipe in through a video, right? But we also feel there's something about people, the way they think of their problems, that make us think ours is unique and the techniques wouldn't work and no one would understand. And we kind of got to just get over that. Like, there's the same problem cycled all over and over again. We all have kind of the same problems.
Yeah. And we could really come at this from a place of really a holistic approach of really trying to find the sweet spot in navigating all of this. And what I found I found support groups and Facebook groups and online groups out there that talk about this, but so much of what I see in those groups is more ranting, more blaming, more of that type of conversation going on that isn't problem solving. It's like, yeah, this is what you're in. Well, everybody knows what they're in. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. And there's this projection as to that narcissist, that borderline, that sociopath that's over there that is causing all of this. And there's this projection onto them as a place to just dump all of their anger. And it doesn't get us anywhere. That whole collusive conversation leads us deeper into the hole. And what we're doing in these classes and with my coaching is wiping all of that out and saying, yeah, this is obvious. This is what's going on. This is the cycle. How do we get out of it? Let's solve the problem. And let's give you techniques to start to step back that aren't, an engagement, that aren't blaming, that isn't running this deeper into your system, that's actually giving you an off-ramp.
Yeah. What you think about, you talk about. What you talk about, you bring about. So right. By definition, if you're thinking about all the terrible things your ex has done and then joining groups and talking about it, and you end there, you probably just attract more of that to yourself, right? But if you talk about the crazy things or the hurtful things your ex has done in an environment that says, okay, now how do we get you healthy? Or now how do we protect you if that ever happens again? Or how do we make sure the kids are okay? And you move right on to solutions.
Right.
So what you're thinking about, again, it's changing your thinking and changing your actions. And people don't change as well on their own. We're not, you're not a not-for-profit. You have a business, right? You do for a living. You charge money for something that has value, and people pay hard-earned money for it. And it may save them even more money with their attorneys, but it has value, or has money they have to pay up front. We're not doing that because you're a greedy mogul. We're doing that because people don't change as well alone. And the country needs to change. Their family needs to change. Their kids need to change. The court systems needs these things to change. And people just don't change as well alone as they do with coaches, which is why professional golfers still have coaches and things like that.
And, we need reflection. We need help. This is an area that we can't do on our own. And I keep coming back to this, Charlie. If we don't have a cohesive team of professionals that lead us through this, we're going to get lost in the weeds. And, you know, attorneys, we've talked about this in other podcasts, they look at this from an adversarial piece. Even mediators don't understand some of the components of the high conflict personalities that are here. We're talking about a niche of situations that, again, are working from a totally counterintuitive position. And if we don't have people on our team that understand that, and that we can give reflection to, then this thing goes along a lot longer with a lot more intensity than is necessary.
Yeah. I'm looking at some of your points, and forgive me if I go out of order, or you just take us back to wherever you want to be, but one of just the themes of my study, my personal development, is the word should and shouldn't. And it seems like those are two of the most dangerous words to us in the English language, because as soon as you say something shouldn't be the way it is, right, or should have been different, you're into judgment and kind of fighting reality. And the one thing that you're just not going to change is reality, right? How important do you think it is for people to embrace the reality that the other person's not the problem? They just act the way they do, right? And you can't change them. That's what reality is delivered to you. The only reality that does exist is the one you're in, right? So wishing it was differently doesn't get us very many places. How important do you think it is that people accept that and stop fighting it, and cursing the darkness and light a candle or whatever?
I think the acceptance of what they're in is essential to learning how to manage it. And, problem solving is what this is all about.
Right.
And before we can solve a problem, we've got to understand what the problem is. We've got to be acceptance that this is our problem. And it's not the other person is the problem. The situation is problematic. So how do we solve the situation so it's not so problematic? That I can move forward, that I can get the kids out of the middle of this, that I can do something different in this. And that's taking that projection off of this, of being somebody else that's causing it, because we're part of the causation. We're in it. This is the situation. This is the causation of the relationship.
Right. So I go too far, but if you don't like the way the relationship is going with your ex, it takes two to tango, and those results are what results you get with them acting crazy and you acting without a coach.
Right.
So we know where you without a coach gets you guys, gets your life. So this particular episode, we're talking more about the class than the other episodes of the title and the focus. There's no such thing as failure. There's only outcomes. If you don't like the outcomes of the way you've been doing it, change something in the equation, right? Do it with a coach. Do it with a class. Do it where you're reporting back to people if you choose, right?
Right. And it comes back up to that series of excuses of not doing it. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. It's not my fault. And coming into, if I don't change this, I'm going to have less money. I'm going to have less time because I have to keep going back. And I can solve the problem. So I can take responsibility here.
Yep.
So, after 2 or 3 or 4 weeks when people are in the classes, they start to come in and they start to see things start to change. And, he or she may be continuing to do the same things. I'm talking about the ex, but the people say, I'm not doing the same things and it feels better. Things are working a little bit better.
Right.
Or he or she has stopped doing some of the things. And I continue to the course and it continues to feel better. This is the progression. After 4 to 6 weeks in the classes, people start to say things have changed and the conflict is getting less, or things haven't changed with him or her and it continues to feel more and more manageable. So these are consistent. I mean, there are very few people that come through that don't have these statements, and again, things are getting worse, but I can handle it. Or things are getting worse, but it kind of makes me laugh. Or things are getting worse, and the kids seem to be doing better in spite of the chaos. I mean, these are all statements that come through, and they're positive feedback on any level of what the other parent is doing, what the ex is doing. So there's this consistent movement forward. And then, 7 weeks and beyond, it's like, wow, I got this. Focusing on keeping the kids out of the middle. The kids are doing better. I'm doing better. And it doesn't matter what the other parent's doing. And
Right.
this is often the end game at the end of the 9 weeks that people do in this course. It's just this steady movement into a better situation.
And it doesn't matter what they're doing. Does it have an effect on your children? Yes, but unless you're God, you can't change that. So get out of that business, stay in your own business, right?
Right.
And create the environment that they love to go to. If the other one really is that crazy and painful, create the environment. I can't talk about how important it is that the people listening create one environment, the place that they control, the relationship with their kids and in their home and all that. One safe place that they can see is getting healthier and healthier and healthier, especially if everything you say about your ex is true and you see your situation as unique and your ex is the worst, and how could you be helped by the class because they're so bad? You could be helped more by the class and by the techniques, and your kids need it more than other kids if what you say is true.
Yep. And the statement that we come back to time and time again in these podcasts is that, it only takes one parent for the kids to be okay. It's not ideal, but it's good enough. Right. And without that uptick in one parent's awareness and their willingness to step in and go the extra mile, to do the extra work, to learn the extra techniques, the children are going to get lost. And that is tragic.
And if you go deep enough spiritually, you can get to the point where you go, life is happening for these kids, not to them, and they would not have been better off with the perfect parents that we wish the family had become.
Right.
There's something in it for these kids. Pain is not bad, right? It's just it's part of reality, and it motivates, right? There's something in it for these kids, and it's hard for all of us. I mean, all of us that watch our kids go through things that we wish wouldn't happen or be treated in ways that we wish people wouldn't do. And the reality, we still come back to the same thing, that's what reality allowed. And life is happening for them, and we can help guide them, and they're going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah. And, you and I talk about this all the time. We talk about it on camera. We talk about it off camera. But, I've watched your progression through all of this. And the conversations that you and I have about your children is that your children are more engaging. They are doing better. It's not perfect. There are still things that are going on that are frustrating, but you manage them better. And because you manage them better, they're settling in. And because they're settling in a little bit more, your level of frustration is dropped. The explosiveness and the crazy making that goes on is retreating into the shadows. And this is the normal progression of this when people go through these classes, when they get some coaching, when there's some feedback for them in real time. Part of the coaching work that I do is often post-class. And people will pick up the phone and they'll say, can you give me a session? I've got a situation. Can you help me through this? And we'll do one or two situations, and they'll, go off and they'll get back into the game. And that's where we're headed here. This isn't something that we want to be doing all of the time, but we want to be able to step in and get the information and then get the reinforcement, and then we can keep moving down the line.
If I can speak for the people that are in the situation, in the middle of it, wishing it would end or change or whatever, right? I'll speak for that group since I'm in that group. I feel like helplessness and lack of control is one of the main things we feel. Like, we don't want something to be the way it is, and we really want it to change, or want to have a card to play or something to do, and we wait 2 months and show up at court and nothing happens. We're like, I just lost 2 months, right? I want to make progress, right? Another example, we were on a trip the other day, my girlfriend and I, and one of the highways came to a complete standstill for 45 minutes. Didn't even move. We couldn't see the accident. Nobody could talk to each other really. And I'm telling you, I was begging to go 5 miles an hour. We were moving at all. 5 miles an hour would drive me crazy. I wanted anything just to get a little closer to my destination. Progress is so important. And the reason that you've seen me change, and kind of why we're explaining the class in so much more detail, the only card you have to play is working on you. The only way to make progress with these types of people is to change who you are. and it's the only way to help the kids anyway. So the only other option is sit there and be passive and do nothing, or try stuff that's not proven, which can be really dangerous, like listening to Just Friends and angry Facebook books or whatever,
Right.
Facebook groups, right? So what we're really passionately saying is, especially since it will probably save you money on attorney's fees, it certainly would have saved me a ton. You know that from knowing my situation. You'll probably get the money back anyway, though we can't promise that, but it's lots of track record. These classes will help you and your kids. I passionately believe that.
And, I'm constantly looking out there, Charlie, and I want to have more resources. I want to know that there's more resources. I want to be able to refer to more resources. But we're unique here. We're doing something that I can't say that anybody else is doing. And that's frustrating for me because I want more people getting this stuff. I want more people to have these resources. But until that happens, we've got something going on here that's really special.
And I've heard you talk about train the trainer, and if there's people listening that are like, hey, let's start more of these groups, you know what I mean? You'd be willing to talk to that person, right, about getting into solving the problem too in a big way?
Absolutely. I do have training classes for instructors, and I do those typically 2 times a year. I've got one coming up at the end of March now. And if somebody is interested in that, or, they've got 2 or 3 people around that they know that would like to get more training, I'm willing to come in and put those pieces together for them.
That's awesome. Now, at the time we recorded this podcast, you just added a second group class, right? So there's more of these classes that work better for timing on the East Coast and things like that. Is that true?
That's correct. So we've just added one for Mondays at 3:30 Pacific time, and they could come in if they're in Central or Eastern time, or even afternoon here on the Pacific Coast, and they want that slot, so they're not up until dark out 30 in the middle of the night.
Exactly. Anything else you want to say on the class, or the reasons that, the roadblocks that get in people's way and how they could maybe avoid them?
No, Charlie, I think that we've really covered that, but I just really wanted to bring this moment together, not as a commercial, but as a realization that, this is an important piece, and to get more help, to step in and really engage in it, and just not listen, but to be a participant in it.
Yeah. And I'll put my 2 cents in that as well, because I don't want it to be a commercial, though I'm a full believer in capitalism and selling things. In my world, selling is helping people know what they should do and helping people to do what they should do. And that's the hard part, the second piece.
Yeah.
All you have here on today's episode is 2 guys who really think you should do this, by us comparing the people who've done it and the people who haven't, and the results they're getting and what they spend on attorneys. And more importantly, what they do to their own bodies with the difference in emotion, and then how the kids react to that. We think everybody going through this should have a coach and should have this training so that they can go through it with as much grace as possible and minimize the negative effects on the children. Just maximize your life.
Well said.
Fair enough? All right, guys, we'll wrap up episode 28. Be back next week. This one was on, people that are thinking, I don't need this class because the other person is the problem. We 100% agree with you. This entire podcast exists. The whole, all of these episodes, 28 episodes now exist because we know that the other person is the problem. The issue is they're not seeing themselves as a problem and fighting like heck to change. Therefore, you're the only hope that your kids have. You're the only hope for your own emotions, for you moving on, having having a wonderful, healthy relationship in your life sometime, which is an amazing experience. So we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. The High Conflict Parenting Podcast with Brooke Olson and Charlie Jewett. Bye-bye.
Again, everybody have a great week. Bye.
Brooke, people don't have to wait until Friday mornings to get more content. If this is something that's helpful for them, right? This isn't the first time you've broadcast anything or recorded anything or put anything out there in the world. What are the other ways people can get the help more aggressively or speed up their recovery process? What materials are available for people right now?
Well, I've written a book called The Black Hole of High Conflict, and it's available on Amazon and Kindle.
Great.
And everything that we're talking about is really compressed and put into there. So this is a really good starter place to get in and get your mind working and to see what these concepts are about and how to start to apply them. The other place that I think that is valuable is to go to our website and look at some of the blog articles that I've written. Those are available there as well. They go into some of these other arenas, and that's at www.highconflict.net. So the book, the website are also really good places to get the material. And also we have classes. We have high conflict diversion program classes that you can get into and get some one-on-one help with this as well.
And you know me, I'm aggressive. Whatever I want to become good at or learn, I find someone who's good at it and pay them and hire them and shorten my learning curve. What if somebody just wants your help? Somebody says, Brook has this information. He's good at something I'm not good at yet, and I want to work with him. Do you have any type of coaching or consultations or anything like that?
Absolutely, I do. I do one-on-one coaching for custody cases. I help people get ready for family court services. If you've got that in your community, I work with attorneys and clients to help them with managing and strategically setting them up to have more successful cases as well.
And how do they reach out? You want them to just go to the website or email or phone, or what's the best way for them to reach out, raise their hand, and say, I need some help?
They can email me. My direct email is brook@highconflict.net. That's BROOK at highconflict, HIGH, conflict.net.
Perfect. That's everything everybody would need to get some help, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brook.
Thank you, Charlie.